Hey, property managers, in addition to collecting rents for your clients, how would you like to earn other income on your residents' essential services? Things like electricity, cell phone, high-speed internet, and television. Be your residents' one-stop concierge for all of their essential services. If you have any questions, click on the link below and give me a call. Hey everybody, there's a little bit of a snafu. It was supposed to be another intro. So if you'll just bear with me, we'll do the one that it's supposed to be, and then we'll come back and start the session. Hey there. Do you ever wonder how the rich seemingly get richer year after year while you're still struggling? Or do you wonder, what are you going to leave behind for your kids? What kind of legacy will you leave for your heirs? What about you'd like to know more about financial freedom through passive and residual income? If any of these are topics you'd like to know more about, but you don't know where to start, let's get connected. I have a 10-part strategy to grow, protect, and transfer wealth that I call Pitranomics. I'm Juli Pitra. Join me in my Facebook group, and let's grow together. See you soon. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Michael. And we had the wrong intro, so that was fun. And this is Juli Pitra here on my Thursday talks to talk about Pitranomics, my 10-part strategy to grow, protect, and transfer wealth. And I'm pretty excited. Tonight, we have a special guest, Mr. Michael Ross, who is a CPA, certified public accountant, but not just a certified public accountant. He is also a certified fraud examiner, a certified valuation analyst, and he's certified in financial forensics. So all of that to say, he is an amazing strategic partner. I hope you enjoy the gems that he is going to drop with us tonight. Michael, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your continued support of Pitranomics, and welcome.
Thank you for your kind introduction. I appreciate that. And, I guess, Julie, why don't we kind of introduce what we're going to talk about tonight, and then, we can go back and forth with everybody.
Okay. So one of the things, first of all, there are 10 strategies to Pitranomics. And the one thing that's really important that people a lot of times forget is how to mediate one's biggest expense, and that's your taxes. I mean, they loom large. And the way to do that best is to be strategic about whatever events are going to affect your tax obligation. And the best way to do that is to have a wonderful strategic partner who can help you plan how to conduct most of your business so that you can mediate your tax liability. So that includes business planning, that includes tax strategy, tax mediation. It also includes adopting the right mindset and habits in order to enable your tax strategist partner to help you. And we're going to focus a little bit on that today. Michael's going to discuss a little bit about a business plan, what that means, and hopefully I'll share a little bit about some of the benefits I've had working with Michael. And then if this is just interactive, if you guys have questions, that would be awesome. So Michael, please, let's get into it.
Thanks, Julie. Appreciate that. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, can hear you.
Good. Good deal. So one of the things that when Julie mentions being strategic about taxes, I would say this, that the majority of people come to me after they've concluded a transaction. not before. And I'm not saying that that there's anything wrong with that, okay? But it could put the tax practitioner in a position where they have to be reactive instead of proactive. So I would just want to encourage everyone to, when you're going to undertake a transaction that's complicated or even simple, try to talk to your accountant before the fact. And, because sometimes, advanced planning can really save you a lot of money. And I realize that we live in a very fast moving world, that in real estate, you have to be opportunistic. You have to be poised. An opportunity comes your way. You have to move quickly. And maybe there's just not a whole lot of time for you to devote to the tax aspects of a transaction. And I would just say this, try to make that a priority and try to do that before the fact, because it's much more difficult to be a tax strategist after the fact. And instead, you become a tax tactician as opposed to a strategist. So that's all I want to share about that.
Well, I'd like to just add, what I do is I invest in real estate, and sometimes one must divest oneself of real estate. So selling a piece of real estate to me is something you consult your tax strategist before you put the property on the market or attempt to sell it, so that the impact of selling those properties can be properly planned for. Even if it's just, hey, I need the cash, I'll take the tax hit. Oh, okay. Or if it's, I'm going to free up this cash to invest in something else. Always remember, big moves, especially big moves that have tax implications, should be discussed with your tax strategist prior to implementing the move.
And I want to mention too, I had a client that had a piece of property. It had a very large potential gain if they were to sell it. And the client basically did some things that, the client did some sort of transaction and then came to me and said, I really wish I would have exchanged that pursuant to a Section 1031 exchange. And I think you all probably know what that's about. And I'll take a minute just to talk about that. A 1031 exchange is where you basically, instead of selling your property, you exchange it with somebody else that has property, that has real property. And what that does is it allows you to defer a gain into the new piece of property that you acquired. Unfortunately, the client came to me and said, gee, I really want to do an exchange, but they didn't have the right entity set up. They already transacted cash with respect to the transaction. And there wasn't a whole lot there wasn't much that I could do after the fact. And so if you have a piece of property that has a large unrealized gain, you want to sell it, think about, doing a 1031 exchange. There are special intermediaries out there that can line you up with a prospective new property. In other words, there are intermediaries that transact in 1031 transactions. That's all they do. So, and that allows you to defer tax, and that can be huge, especially if you're talking a commercial piece of real estate or residential piece of real estate. There may be many millions of dollars in gain that would be subject to tax. So that's just FYI.
I think that's really important to remember. Not everybody knows all the ins and outs of how a transaction can affect one's tax liability, like your tax strategist or even just your CPA. Here's an example. I know someone who, good friend of mine, and she and her husband are sitting on a piece of property worth about $2.5 million that they paid probably less than 300 for a few decades ago. So when I was speaking to her, her understanding about what she could do with that capital gains was a little different than my understanding. So my advice was speak to a tax strategist. And here's the one thing: not every inch of your increased gain when you sell your personal home is tax deductible because it's your personal home. There's a limit. Beyond that limit, you need to figure out what to do. What is your plan? And so that's not even an investment piece of property. That's her personal home. What is she going to do? I hope she reaches out to someone like Michael Ross so she can properly plan what to do. But again, you don't do it after you've sold the property. You do it, hey, I'm thinking about selling this asset that has a lot of capital gains. What should I do? Not after I've already sold the property. So not to belabor the point, but it is meant to be proactive and not reactive.
And
The
you've
other
seen
thing,
that. Oh, I'm sorry, Julie, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Well, I was going to say Michael Ross is also a business plan writer or creator. And when you
Developer.
have a business plan, you plan for a lot of these tax affecting strategic moves. So that's a great time to then speak to your CPA, who is your tax partner and your tax strategist, before it happens. I actually need to have a conversation with Mr. Ross about something upcoming. So thank you for reminding me. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, there are a lot of real estate investors that do a lot of flipping, and we're talking about $5-6 million flips that they do, on one piece of property or more that they do, and that's all they do is they just do they do 1031 exchanges because they end up deferring millions of dollars in taxes this way. So I'm not saying that it's not for the small person. It is, but when you start to accumulate wealth and you excuse me, you start to have large gains that you're going to have to recognize if you sell the property. Sometimes it's best to just do a 1031 and exchange it, and they're very viable. It's a great way to save millions of dollars, and you get to use the saved tax for your next deal. Excuse me.
I love it. Michael, did you want to go into describing how important business planning is for tax mediation?
Sure. So I'm sure you all have heard about developing a business plan, and I basically develop business plans primarily for raising capital. And there's two types of documents that I would be called on to prepare. And basically what I'm doing is I'm packaging a deal is what I'm doing for a client. They need their deal packaged. They need a very professional presentation. It needs to be sent to sophisticated investors, and in many cases they're trying to raise several millions of dollars. So there's two types of documents that can be prepared. One is a business plan document, and I call that a capital formation business plan. The other is what's called a private placement memorandum, or PPM. Private placement memorandum is a little different than a straight business plan in that you will actually package like a subscription agreement to subscribe to the deal. Um, there would be additional disclosure in a private placement memorandum that would go very deep into discussion of the risks involved. And I'm going to maybe show you a couple of examples of what I mean. And here's the thing: whether you need to raise 100,000 or 500,000 or 5 million or more, I would encourage, and you don't have a sense of who the potential investor is going to be, meaning that you want to market your deal to investors. You don't know who they might be at the outset of wanting to do this, but you have to have proper documents that a real estate investor would expect to see from a sophisticated real estate entrepreneur. So we can talk a little bit about some of these things. Julie, any thoughts on your end before I pull something up here?
No, but there are a couple of things I'd like to maybe clarify. You said that sophisticated investors would be expecting to see such documents.
Right.
I'd love to explain particularly what a sophisticated investor is and maybe what a sophisticated investor is not, what the target audience for a business plan is,
Right.
and how to present oneself as an experienced, savvy real estate professional seeking
Sure.
capital investment.
Sure. So when I talk about a sophisticated investor, I mean somebody that basically invests in many deals. Sometimes they're called institutional investors because all they do is those institutional investors go out and raise millions of dollars, and then they look for real estate deals. So they're kind of an intermediary, if you will. They're an institutional investor, if you will. Okay. And they do things like they basically go after bigger money. Like sometimes they'll go after private equity funds to raise, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars. And then they look for deals, smaller deals, that they can then reinvest that money. So that's an institutional investor. They, because they are institutional investors, there's certain disclosure that that you need to do in a private placement memorandum versus let's call it a smaller investor, also known as an accredited investor. An accredited investor is somebody that has a certain amount of income and a certain amount of net worth, which the securities laws require that, depending upon what provision of the security laws that you fall into, you would only be able to market your deal to accredited investors or unaccredited investors. And basically, an accredited investor has to have a certain amount of net worth and income in order to invest, and that you can only market your deal in some cases to accredited investors. So at any rate, I hope that helps kind of with the explanation, Julie.
I think that helps. Let's say, for example, you had an amazing deal that you believed, or amazing proposition you believe would make money, and you were going to appear on Shark Tank. And so
Right.
you just go up there before the panel of Shark Tank investors and you say, I have this amazing deal. Give me money so I can make it happen. And they start asking you questions about your projections, about the viability of your product, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And you have no answers. Well, they're going to look back at you and think, no, we're not giving you any money, not any of our money. You're not investing. However, if you have a solid plan, if you've spoken to someone like Michael Ross and you have a plan, you've done projections, you understand the viability, you understand how you need to maneuver in the market, and it's written down and it's something you can communicate, you go before that same panel with the same plan. Now you can defend it and you can gain credibility with the panel of Shark Tank investors. So think of it as your script for presenting your deal to investors that will have very serious questions on how you're going to make that a success. What's unfortunate, there are a lot of people who are successful in certain endeavors, but they don't have a plan. They're just, lucky and winging it. But and I think I, have been one of those myself. But once you start thinking about what is my plan, I need to scale. I need large sources of money in order to scale that aren't mine. And you want someone else to invest their money, well, they're going to want returns. How do you, prove to them? How do you communicate to them you are going to provide return on their money, return of their money? You'll be a going concern without going through the trouble of making sure you have a solid plan behind you. And so that's one thing that Michael Ross can help you do. He prepares you for the Shark Tank interview, which is maybe not 1 hour in front of Mark Cuban and his cronies, but it's being presented to certain people who are like, oh, I find that interesting. I might like to invest in that. So consider your
Yeah.
audience. I hope that provides a little bit.
Absolutely. And, one thing that, when you go on Shark Tank, has everybody here watched Shark Tank? I guess that would be a
I've watched
question.
it.
Yeah. Okay. It's a great show. Uh, Let me say this, that you really have to get your elevator pitch down. And what an elevator pitch is that, let's just say you're walking into a building and you get into an elevator with somebody and they ask you what you do and you tell them, hey, here's what I do, here's what I'm trying to do. The elevator pitch needs to last about a minute and a half, okay? Because all you have is the attention from when you go in that elevator to when you get to the floor that you need to go to. And a lot of people don't do well with the elevator pitch because they haven't done enough planning with respect to their deal to be able to convey with confidence, what they're trying to do. Now, I think Shark Tank does a great job of preparing people to obviously get on stage and be up in front of the sharks and all that. I think because most of the time when you watch it, most of the folks seem to have sort of a standard format with regard to their elevator pitch, so that's been thought out, and I'm sure the producers of that show are helping these aspiring entrepreneurs to get ready for the sharks. But not all of us have the opportunity to market our deal, okay, to the sharks or to get national attention by being on TV. And many of us have to go through intermediaries, people that that are seeking deal flow and can help you with raising money, things of that nature. So what I thought I would do is show you some components of what goes into a business plan or a private placement memorandum, and we can talk about it for a little bit. And I hope you all don't get glossed. Your eyes don't get glossed over or anything like that. But I really think that what I'm going to show you is what I think are things you need to get a handle on in order to be successful in raising money. And before we do that, I just want to talk about sources of capital. Sources of capital it comes from basically two places. One is family and friends, and one is unknown third parties. Okay. Typically with your family or friends, you may not really need a business plan. You might just need to sit down with them and kind of verbally discuss your plan. You're not trying to raise a lot of money, maybe 100,000 here or 100,000 there, things of that nature where you don't need to have that formality, okay, that you would necessarily need to have with a third party. And basically what I also want to discuss with you are the elements of the capital formation process. And we can talk a little bit about that because basically there is a standard protocol when you're trying to raise capital, what you do and how things evolve. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Julie, don't let me forget to come back to that at some point.
Okay, sure.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to pull up, bear with me, I'm going to pull up okay, I've got that right there. Let me go back. I'm going to share my screen. I'm new to this particular platform, but I'm hoping that you all can see what I'm trying to show you here.
I don't see it yet, Michael. There it is. Okay.
Okay. So can you see it? Can you see that okay?
Yes.
And I'll need some verbal feedback, Julie, because I'm only able to see it. I'm not able to see what you're all able to see.
Right. I can see it. It looks like a document, like I can see the heading and trends in a cyclical housing market. Yes.
Right. Can you see that?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. And can you see the text here?
I can see it's small. Yep. Or maybe
Okay.
my eyes aren't good. I can see it. Yep. Okay.
Is that a little better, maybe?
Yes,
Okay.
it is for me. Yep.
So a lot of you, this particular graphic was something that I put into a business plan for the investor to understand the process of finding, basically the process of fixing and flipping. Okay. This particular fund was for distressed properties. So what we needed to do here is we didn't really know at the time who the investors would be, but we wanted that investor to understand what deal flow looks like, and that's what this is attempting to portray. And basically, go ahead, Julie. Did you have a question?
No, I'm just listening.
So basically, if you look at the green arrow, what happens is in distressed properties, the homeowner defaults on a mortgage. Okay. And I'm not seeing what everybody else is seeing. So if there's a problem, please let me know. The homeowner defaults on a mortgage. The lender repossesses the property. The property was not maintained and becomes distressed. The lender posts the property for sale as part of a real estate owned portfolio. And you'll hear that often like a bank will have an REO portfolio, real estate owned portfolio. And then an investor or developer will acquire the property for fix and flip. And then the property is sold to a new homeowner. So that's the process on distressed property. Now, the client was putting together a fund in order to do this. Okay, in other words, they wanted to provide money to investors and developers to acquire a piece of property for fix and flip. And the clients wanted to convey, what is the opportunity point for this fund? And that is when an investor or developer acquires for fix and flip and needs to raise money. And that's all this is essentially trying to portray. So I hope that y'all find that helpful.
Michael, there's some verbiage right below that I think is crucial to people who participate in the real estate investment market. Small loans are inefficient.
Right. Let me go to the beginning of this.
Okay.
Traditional lenders often find it difficult to originate and manage smaller loans that require an understanding of the fix and flip market segment. So that's where we talk about hard money, by the way. Unless you go to a hard money lender, which this is what they do, traditional lenders like a bank could potentially have difficulty in making smaller loans that require an understanding of the fix and flip segment. Small loan lending is typically driven by local private investors and hard money lenders, and varies significantly by geographical market. With the advent of so many investors buying for they don't do fix and flip, they do fix and rent. So does that make sense? They're basically institutional investors doing fix and flip on single family homes. But that's why we say that small loan lending is typically driven by local private investors and hard money lenders. And it does vary significantly by geographical market. Some markets are better than others. Some markets are very rural and may not, and a hard money lender may not, be wanting to get into a, yeah. Go ahead, Julie.
I will say this one thing. For the new investor that says, hey, I want to flip a property or buy a property to renovate and hold. If you're seeking, for example, hard money lending, you still have to justify your plans. They're going to ask you questions. They want to know how much money you need, what the money is going to be used for, when do you anticipate returning that money back to them, what is your contingency plan if you can't. They're going to have charges if you aren't able to return that money in the time that you said. You have to pay maybe an additional charge. They want to know your anticipated exit plan from their loan. How do they get their money back? And they'll communicate terms. So an interest rate that a new investor might get will be different, let's say, from an interest rate that an experienced investor will get, because the risk is higher on a new investor. So you are, in essence, creating a plan. It's a small short-term one, even if you're applying for a short-term loan, or even if you're applying for your own home loan. Even the bank that lends you money, it's like, okay, how are you going to be able to pay that money back? Are you going to take care of the property so it's useful collateral? And are we going to get our money back at the end of the term? Now, the business plan enables you to scale that explanation. But make no mistake, you're doing it either well or poorly in every endeavor when you're requesting capital from someone else.
And what I want to mention is that this client that came to me to do this plan, they were trying to be basically a bridge between a very small lender and an institutional lender. So they were trying to be kind of like in the middle. And so that's why we speak here that the small loan sizes are inefficient for larger debt funds and institutional capital to underwrite. The local investor is constrained on capital and is unable to access traditional financial markets like your bank, like a bank, a commercial bank. Notwithstanding, smaller loans in general produce more attractive yield spreads because of the risk and the fact that hard money lenders loan at much higher rates, because in a fix and flip, there's a lot of risk that, you'll never fix that. You'll never finish that fix. So, there has to be, and so you'll default, and the lender just, in this market, on a smaller type of project, the lender or the developer could basically default. So the lender has to price at a higher yield to allow for loan losses.
To make that, Michael, I'm doing some investing in Paris, Texas, and I do know of a hard money lender that lent to a borrower. I don't know who the borrower is, but apparently the borrower took the money and did not fix up the property. So now the money's gone and the property itself is not valued enough to give the lender recovery of that money. So what are they going to do?
That happens a lot, by the way. There are
It's happened to me.
Julie, it happens a lot. That's why in private conversations with you, I've talked about how this business can be really very, very difficult and very roughshod, and people do crazy things. But the problem might have been that the hard money lender did not do enough due diligence. I just don't know, but it happens. I've seen it happen many times where the developer just runs away with the money, and the lender is stuck with a property that is upside down with respect to their loan. So
exactly. Like I have a project going, and every time they do a draw, like give me more money against that loan, they have someone coming to inspect to make sure that what I said is going to happen has happened on that property. And they also, not only do they want to make sure the work has been done, but they want to make sure the people who have done the work will not have been paid and will no longer file a lien against the property. So that's another thing. You have to protect not just the value of the property, but the value of the ownership of the property. So, they can get that back without some reducing lien on it.
Now, let me say this, that there are folks that are good credit risks that are able to borrow money from a hard money lender on a non-recourse basis. And that, what I mean by that is that they only seek collateral to the property and not to the underlying investor or the underlying developer. So there's the notion of recourse and non-recourse loans. Recourse loans are, let me rephrase that. I misspoke. So you have recourse and non-recourse lending. With recourse lending, you look to the underlying property as the collateral, and you're not seeking a personal guarantee. That's on a recourse loan. On a non-recourse loan, you're not relying on the property, but you're relying on the person who's seeking that loan, and their basically their personal financial situation. And sometimes in these plans, we do have to provide an investor with our personal financial statement, meaning that you're going to have to provide like you would at a bank, you would have to do that to a particular investor. But I would not have you do that where you're where you don't know the investor. In other words, you don't want to just send it out to an unknown third party. Your personal financial statement is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I have found that in interviewing different lenders just for what I do, which is nowhere near the level where I want to be, some want to know a whole lot about your personal assets to be the recourse in case that the property itself doesn't hold the value, and then others are like they're really studying the asset itself for collateral. So I would like to be one of those that has this large capital raise. I'm looking forward to being there in the next year or two. Just need to get through some things. So I am very excited about going to the next strategic phase with Michael, and that is sending my business plan of what I do out to institutional and sophisticated investors, institutional, sophisticated, and accredited investors. Right. I'm loving the journey. So I hope you all are coming with me on that as well. Michael, can you tell us a little bit about, with this particular business plan and this client, without divulging anything private, how much money were they able to raise, and were they successful in the deployment of that capital?
So I would say this. I worked with this company about 8 or 9 years ago, and they're not around today. What I do know is that the gentleman who retained me, who was the entrepreneur, has some very serious health problems. So I wasn't able to really stay in touch with him because he was just very ill. I believe they were successful in raising money. I don't know how much, but basically the client wanted to get into the hard money business. He wanted to set up a fund. He wanted to loan this money out, and he wanted to get a percentage of the interest income that would come in, as well as any fees. So he was wanting to be a hard money lender, and that's what was the nature of this particular business concept. And what's interesting is we identified here what we call the core lending strategy. I hope y'all can see that. The core lending strategy of the fund is to produce attractive risk-adjusted current returns to its equity and note holders. In other words, the client was seeking equity investment and borrowings from investors by originating and or acquiring. So this basically the fund would originate and or acquire short-term real estate loans secured by first mortgages or deed of trust on non-owner occupied 1 to 4 unit residential properties. The fund was going to originate loans with maturities ranging from 6 to 24 months, with a typical maturity of 6 to 12 months. And look, if you're doing a fix and flip, you want to get it done in 6 to 12 months, because beyond that, it would just be taking way too long, and your deal could potentially become uneconomical. The fund was going to lend nationwide, but will primarily focus on the local markets of New York, California, Nevada, Arizona, Florida, and Texas, and other secondary markets where there may be a void in local fix or flip hard money lending. The loans would have targeted loan to values of 60 to 80%, depending on the type of property, the rehab plans, and the borrower's capacity. The fund expects to charge annual interest of between 11 and 18%, which is extremely expensive, but it's commensurate with the risk that investor would be undertaking, and will fluctuate depending upon current market conditions. The fund intends to target loans ranging from $150,000 to $1 million, with an average loan size of approximately $240,000. Now, this was back in 2014 or 13 or whatever. I don't remember, but that number now is probably more like, instead of 240,000, it's probably more like 480,000.
Let me ask you, is there any particular reason why they chose those markets? New York, California, Nevada, Arizona, Florida, and Texas.
Yeah, and that's a great reason that was a very good idea of you to ask that question, Julie. And I will be able to tell you the answer to that is, yeah, this is February. So, U.S. real estate statistics foreclosure trend summary. I want to answer your question, Julie. Mm-hmm. And I have that here somewhere. I remember doing that analysis. Okay. Hottest distressed U.S. metropolitan markets, August of 2014. I mean, let me ask you guys something. Don't you find your real estate opportunities in distressed properties? Julie,
That's right. That's pretty much what I do. I don't know if everyone does that. I mean, I know of someone whose criteria is not distressed there because they're not looking for immediate equity. They're looking more for sustainability in the cash flow, that it's basically breaks even, and that's their investment for retirement. They're at a different point in their life than I am, but I pretty much target distressed properties. It's hard to get a discount on properties that aren't.
Back in August of 2014, the hottest U.S. markets were Miami, Houston, Chicago, Denver, Philadelphia, Las Vegas, Orlando, Phoenix, Fort Lauderdale, and Cincinnati. And the question is, well, how do you know that it's that these are, and that's by the number of properties that are in foreclosure in that market. And then you look at the median sales price on a non-distressed property and compare it to the median foreclosure sales price, and you have a foreclosure savings or discount. And so this is the discount by buying a distressed property, and that's where your margin is at. And you have to be very careful when you improve that property or rehab it. You got to be very careful. You really got to know your margins. You got to know what you're getting into, because with 11 to 18% cost of money, it's just very hard to make money.
Yeah. So you can't over rehab and you can't dilly dally, right?
Right. Exactly. You can't dilly dally. You can't take a long time. It should take 6 months ideally, no more than that. But sometimes they go longer, and for whatever reason. But if you hit the 12-month mark, you're in trouble, most likely.
I'm looking at Chicago, that foreclosure savings discount of 67%. Wow. In 2014. Right. I wasn't in real estate investing then, but wow, right?
Well, you know what's interesting though? Yes, there are properties that are in foreclosure always, but with the housing shortage, I just don't think are as many opportunities as there might have been back in August of 2014. I don't know. That's kind of anecdotal. That's more anecdotal evidence than it is actual evidence.
And you know what's interesting about having this plan, going through this process and understanding, okay, what are the statistics and the numbers and the underlying assumptions around my plan? This is a very good exercise to go through to understand your own business. What it is I can look forward to.
I'm trying to find that document that answers your market question, and here we go. This is a different business plan.
I'm not sure what we're looking at here, Michael. I just see a dark screen.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes.
You still see a dark screen?
You need to present the new tab.
Okay. Yep. You got it. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Share
The other
screen.
thing I would like to, while Michael's bringing up his new presentation here with the business plan, for example, I used to do a lot of work in the Dallas Fort Worth area, but now I'm working in the rural area, and the reason why is because the price at which you can get a property that's distressed compared to the price at which you can get a property when it's ready for, or the value that's created is a lot narrower. And so the likelihood of messing up on that project and being underwater is higher because there's less of a band. We do have a Facebook user question. Would you allow more rehab time for multi-unit properties? So my answer to that would be yes. Still like to get that done in less than a year, even though I am currently in a project that's taken more than a year, but it's my first multi-unit property that I'm working with another investor with, and so it's taking longer. But oh my gosh, it's better than any university as far as what I'm learning. And that goes back to the very first time I did a renovation. I did not take a little bit of time like an experienced investor would, but I learned a lot, which helped me going forward on my own doing the process. So that question, would you allow more rehab time for multi-unit projects? It would depend on how experienced that person is. I would say an inexperienced person would need more time, but an experienced person can overcome a lot of hurdles and get straight to it. So I think that's an excellent question.
Basically, I'm going to share with you, Julie. I'm going to get back to your question about markets. Let me just, before we do that, distressed loans, preferred strategy for lenders. Most lenders
Can you make that bigger, Michael? We'll make that bigger.
I'll try to make it bigger.
There we go.
Okay, here we go. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, distressed loans, preferred strategy for lenders. So a lender, and by the way, if you want to have access to distressed loans, there are many ways to find that out. But sometimes the banker is going to deal with somebody that they know. So it might not be a bad idea to network with bankers that deal with distressed loans. But this is distressed loans preferred strategy for lenders. By the way, this deal that I was working on for the client was, they were trying to raise $100 million to do fix and flip loans. So basically most lenders, 56.7% of lenders, want to extend the loan with mortgage modification. About a quarter want to sell the loan to a third party. 13% want to foreclose and dispose. And then about 5% want to extend the loan without mortgage modification. So more on an informal basis. Thought y'all would find that interesting.
I find it is now the way I looked at that before you explained it is I thought, okay, most lenders want to extend the money and maybe transfer it into a less risky product, like from a hard money loan to a fixed rate mortgage or fixed over a period of time. But the almost 13% with foreclose and dispose, I found that quite interesting. I read that as they allow for that much of their lending to fall into foreclosure, and that would affect the rate that they charge. Did I read that wrong?
I think so, Julie. No, I think you got that right. I want to say this, though, that this was in 2014, I believe. Mm-hmm. But if you go back to the 2008 financial crisis, I mean, the typical chart, okay, the typical pie chart was way different. You had a lot more foreclosures, okay? back in the day.
Right.
And that was a huge part of the pie. I hope we never go back to that again.
Well, I hope so as well.
And
so let me just ask an off-the-wall question. How many pages is this business plan?
This business plan is 31 pages.
31 pages. So should someone be able to have an elevator speech handy after the results of going through
Absolutely.
a business plan, compelling? I've been ruminating, what is my elevator pitch? I don't know if I have one. I might have to ask someone that's heard.
Sometimes I have to help the client develop one.
Okay.
Usually after this process, they're much better equipped with an elevator pitch. And I'm trying to still find that chart, Julie, and I can't. Okay. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Here's where I think this is what I was looking for. Okay. Again, this is old information, but you can maybe start to see how it would be very helpful to have this kind of stuff in a business plan, especially for an investor that may not be a real estate investor. And, so that they learn the nomenclature. But, for example, U.S. apartment, buy, hold, sell. These are recommendations. So in U.S. apartment, buy, hold, sell recommendations. So in Houston, 57% of the market is a buy, 21% is a hold, and 21.9% is to sell it. So that would be a recommendation, okay? And you can do that by market. You can segment this by market, and you kind of see that Washington, D.C. was a much larger hold market than Houston was.
Okay.
So you can kind of use this demographic information to help you formulate a strategy per se, Here's U.S. retail property buy, hold, sell recommendations.
Now, Michael, does this pretty much mean that of all of the apartments, let's say, in the U.S., in Houston, 57% of those are things that a knowledgeable investor would buy?
So,
reading that?
Yeah, I think you make a good point. And again, I haven't seen this for like 6 years, so bear with me, okay?
Okay.
We were talking about what we were trying to do is we're trying to for this particular business plan, we were saying, look, these are the markets that we want to target, and here's why. Okay. So for example, markets with investment prospects, good or better. And it goes 11, 12, 13, 14. And you can see that Dallas-Fort Worth was a good market back in 2014. Whereas in 2011, only New York and Washington were good markets with prospects good or better. So now we're looking at the strategic market, and this kind of will help you could help you in the formulation of a strategy. And that's what we were trying to do here. We were trying to figure out what are our target markets going to be? How do we communicate that to the investor? That we're asking, the 100 million we're trying to raise. How do we convey that? And this is how we conveyed it. This is the reason why we're going after these markets, because they were the top markets with prospects.
I see, like, for example, in 2014, there were 3 Texas cities.
Right. Okay. Yeah, you can see the market just continually improved. Remember, 11, we were still in recovery off the 2008 financial crisis. And interestingly, the New York and Washington were very good markets back then. They came back sooner, let's say, than some of the others did. But so that's again, you're trying to raise money. The investor wants to know why you're going after these markets. You try to explain to them, well, here's the market research that we've done. And then we talk about the buy, hold, sell. Here we were basically Miami. The recommendation is that 58.2% of properties you want to buy, 36% you want to hold, and 5% you want to sell, which is pretty good. It's much better than Philadelphia, where it's a long hold. Now, if you have a long hold here, okay, in Philadelphia, you're going to want to be really want to be careful about why you would go into Philadelphia in the first place, because you got to hold and you got to also borrow hard money, and that clock is going. Okay, so in Philadelphia, you might say, look, I didn't want to pass on Philadelphia. It's just it's just going to take too long. Okay, and the deals, it's going to be risky for the hard money lender in a hold versus a Miami where it's a buy. Okay. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. If we have any questions, please ask them. The other thing that I would, that I don't see here, but I'm sure is somewhere, is what I like to call rent parity. So as an investor, I like to see how much I can rent that property for versus how much it's going to cost me to acquire it and get it to a rent ready status. And for a time, the Cleveland market was very, very good for me. And now I'm less interested in it because it is so difficult to remediate a poorly performing tenant. Not like Texas. You get out in Texas. In Ohio, it seems like.
Yeah. Here's something that's interesting when you're looking at a target geographical market. Back then, they were saying Western markets are performing better overall than other parts of the country. Much of this is due to wealthy foreign buyers investing in U.S. real estate, and there is a lot of real estate investors, a lot of foreigners like Chinese. They love California, in what some interpret as a secular trend. Although they love Florida too, because Ron DeSantis was trying to get rid of them. He was trying to get rid of the Chinese investing. And this was just something I saw the other day. In what some interpret as a secular trend, foreign investors are clearly on a shopping spree. From January to August, they acquired $22.8 billion in U.S. real estate, which accounted for 13% of all real estate transactions in the country, up from 9%. And this was from Real Capital Analytics. Over the last 3 years, the biggest investor was Canada, followed by China and countries in the Middle East.
You know what, Michael? The other thing to really be not concerned about, but to pay attention to, is what's going on in the foreign markets that makes investing in the U.S. markets so attractive. What is it that is making them say, hey, I want to invest in California or Florida? There aren't many countries where I'm outside of the U.S. where I'm like, hey, let me invest there. But I know that plenty of investors who are looking in other countries to invest, Mexico, Belize, other countries. It's like, okay, that's understandable if you have boots on the ground. Okay, so let's hit on one big final topic, because I realize we're over our time.
Yeah.
But I don't want to just end abruptly. But okay, great. Yes. Okay. Okay. That was something that was kind of interesting that I was trying to read, that distress.
Oh, you want me to come back to that?
Well, for a quick minute, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
One of the things I love about having knowledgeable people speak is I learn something every single time. So it's just kind of great. Let's see. Have you brought it back up yet? Because I don't.
I'm getting ready to.
Okay. So here's what I want to sort of mention. Any new venture, it's important to make some plans. What is it you're trying to do with it? What are you trying to accomplish with the venture you're engaging in? And if you're going to be borrowing somebody's money, borrowing or, taking somebody's money, what is it you plan to do about making sure they get their money back and get the return that they're seeking? Because that helps you scale. You satisfy your investors the first time out, they're coming back. They want to reinvest with you again. They want to help you grow. They want to grow and then grow with you. So I hope that you've learned that a business plan isn't just oh my gosh, you got to check that box. It's a tool as the investor to use in growing their business. It's a tool to convey to potential investors in your business that, hey, you can grow with me. I'm actually investing with a woman almost, let's see, 6, 7 years now. It's pretty amazing what she's done as a lead. She always takes care of her investors. So it's just like automatic. We keep putting our money back with her. I would like to be that type of investor where I have a pool of money that people are like, oh my gosh, Julie's taking care of it. And then they keep coming back. And if not that, to help other people invest. So what Michael had there, let's bring that back up.
Can you see that okay? Yeah, there you go.
Yes. A distressed real estate opportunities fund. Okay.
Right.
I love that. And it says specifically caters to the distressed real estate credit marketplace. So what that means is they are trying to be a very niche player in helping to improve distressed properties by providing investors, particularly experienced ones, to go in and improve a property and provide value in that community. So whether or not they're doing it from an altruistic basis or not, when you cater to the distressed real estate marketplace, you are, by definition, is it not, Michael, putting money into the distressed real estate to improve the distressed real estate so that the investor and the real estate professional can both make money, but you're creating value being left behind there. Do you agree, Michael?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, a lot of times I haven't done, let's see, have I done a flip in a distressed market successfully? No, it's pretty much been the one bad house in a great neighborhood. But to find a distressed area to pour money into to create value, that's very interesting to me right there. So that's something I would like to talk to you about later.
Well, so what we want everyone to understand is we want them to try to understand from the lender side of the equation, what the lenders are doing, okay, and then that basically anybody can get into the real estate game if they have the right lender, and that's key. So, if there's anything I can do to help any of you with that, developing a business plan, I'll be happy to help you do that. I love doing it. It's a lot of fun. It's fun to see clients succeed, all that good stuff.
Michael, before we forget, can you post your information in one of the chats? And I'd like to see if anybody in studio would like to ask a question, because you guys have been on mute the whole time. Are there any questions you'd like to ask of me or of Michael before we sign off?
I don't know how to post my, here. All right. I'll just put my phone number.
And maybe your website address. I think I will see if I can get that and put that in. Is that here? Here we go. I'm putting your website.
Okay, I put it in there too.
Okay, good.
I just want to thank Michael for the wealth of knowledge that he brings to the table, and just always enjoy learning from him.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. It's always good to see y'all. I enjoy it.
Thank you. There's one thing I'd like to share that it's like something I share with people that, Michael, you told me, and it's about the fraud triangle. And it's kind of a non sequitur into this, but remember, when you're being the investor in someone else's project, or you are the investor that's holding someone else's money, be aware of the fraud triangle. Michael, you want to explain what that is? Or
Yeah, if I remember it, hold on a second.
it's always top of mind to me.
There's 3 legs to the fraud triangle. The fraudster, there's opportunity, there's there's the opportunity presents itself, i.e. poor internal controls in a business, so that the fraudster can take advantage of bad controls in a business, bad cash controls, for example, in a business. There is a rationalization that the fraudster goes through. The fraudster says, gee, they don't pay me enough. This is why I'm going to perpetuate a fraud. And there is pressure. The fraudster is under pressure. So it's pressure, it's opportunity, it's pressure, and it's rationalization. Those are the 3 legs to the fraud triangle. And that's why frauds get committed, because all 3 of those legs are affected.
And so, like, for example, with a hard money lender, they're diving into your background to make sure there is no pressure for you to abscond with the money. And they have draws so you don't get money until most lenders, you don't get money until you've completed part of the project. So they're limiting your access and they're managing the cash flow. Now, as far as the rationalization, most investors care about their reputation. And that's why an experienced investor who's done several of them, who's building a portfolio, is an attractive risk, because they feel like that person's going to rationalize the fraud less often. That's my take on it. Than someone who's new, maybe runs into trouble and is like, this is way more difficult. They might blame the hard money lender. The reason I'm not doing well is because the lender is charging too much, even though you knew that before you stepped into that hard money loan, how much it was going to cost and what the terms were. And if you didn't know those terms, you lost an opportunity to read your documents and find out exactly how those would impact you. So remember the fraud triangle when you're trying to invest in somebody else's deal and when you're trying to invite someone to invest in yours. And I think that's a great place to end. Thank you, Michael, for appearing. I always learn so much, and it's easy to say, oh, it's the CPA, it's not the exciting part. But I got to tell you, I have been excited and encouraged, remotivated after I'd gone through a terrible time. Real quick, Michael Ross came into my life because of his forensic skills when I was going through a not pleasant situation with former business partners. But I have learned a lot from him, and he is a strategic part of my business now. So I feel like that experience, while not great, did bring some blessings. I'm not saying the experience was a blessing. I'm saying blessings were brought. I try to remember it that way. Every negative experience brings a blessing. And so if you're looking for a good strategic partner for your business, especially in the area of tax mediation or for forensics, please reach out to Michael Ross. He's a great resource. And if you don't want to reach out to him, please reach out to somebody, but I highly recommend his advice. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you guys for your attention, for the extra time. I will see you next week on Thursday. Mwah. Bye.
Bye-bye.